What up, my fellow Survivor lovers? Welcome to Survivor Historian, part of the Challenge Historian podcast feed. I am your host and born-again Survivor superfan, Jacob Hollaball, and with me, as he has been every week throughout this wonderful Survivor 45 season, is the great and powerful Tony Lance. Tony, how are we doing today?
Not too shabby. I just rewatched the finale again for my notes, and I am definitely stoked to talk about it. This was a great season.
Totally forgot to ask you this before we started. Did you watch all of the after show? I know the answer to this is definitely yes, but did you watch all of the post show?
Yes.
Okay, good. Because I did not, and so I will have a couple of key moments where I need you to clarify if something I'm saying was discussed and sounds stupid. But we are here to talk about the finale, which happened a couple weeks back now. Appreciate everyone's patience in us getting able through the holidays and everything else, able to get this out. But we're not just going to talk about the finale today. We're going to run through the highlights of the finale first, and then the second half of the show, we are going to do our full season awards. So no awards, obviously no predictions because the season's over, or any of that type of stuff. So first half of the show, recap of the finale. Second half of the show, somewhat of a recap of the entire season via a bunch of awards that will sound very similar to our episodic rewards, just this time for the entirety of the season. And I may even have some extra bonus awards that I didn't tell Tony about or to prepare for that we will throw in as well. So two-parter episode coming at you. I do not know if when you're listening to this right now, this will actually be two separate podcast episodes that are available at the same time or one long podcast episode. Either way, just make sure you're following or subscribed, or look at the show notes and you'll be able to know. Look at the title of this. I think it'll all be in one podcast though. So if you only want to hear the awards, if you only want to hear the recap of the finale, either one, use the show notes, click the hyperlinks, and go to the part of the podcast that you so desire. Other than that, only programming notes as we literally record this on New Year's Eve, headed into the new year. On Challenge Historian, we just got B-Fank coverage, Challenge Battle for New Champion, the longest season in reality television history, is going to go well into the New Year's. Probably, I think, literally is going to finish when the next season of Survivor starts airing, which I think is actually almost to the week, potentially, depending how many episodes there is. That's the only thing coming in for the month of January, really, on this podcast feed. Tony, anything going down in January over at Challenge Fandom?
Pretty much recaps, same as you. Yeah, we're pretty much straight recapping the entire way. I realized when we recorded on Friday that that this season of the challenge will pretty much overlap having an entire run of Survivor and the start of a new season of Survivor as well, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, it's something really special how they do their scheduling and everything. But that is for a different podcast. If you want my thoughts on that show, if you want Tony's thoughts on that show, obviously you know where to get them. We're here just for Survivor today. We already told you the agenda. So without further ado, let's dive in, starting with the season 45 finale recap. First things first. So we are obviously the finale episode is very long, longest episode of the season. If we would have been recording this immediately after, we'd maybe go a little further in depth and really hit every single little beat. But one, we're doing it a lot later and we want to save plenty of time for the season awards. So we'll trim it down a little. And two, the other thing about the finale is even more than you could say it about the full season, but there really were, there's a couple of decisions that stand out. While there's a lot of interesting little things that happen between each one, that if you wanted the 6-hour version of this podcast, we certainly could give it to you. We will do our best not to do that and try to focus just on the biggest kind of moments and the decisions that had the greatest impact on ultimately D taking home the money and the crown at the end. So the first one we'll start with is the first kind of portion of the episode where Jake wins an advantage. They play the little advantage game on the beach and then go to the immunity challenge that ultimately Austin wins, but I would say Jake loses as much as Austin wins. I
Yeah.
will be using that type of terminology throughout this episode. We'll come back to that by the end in a big way with who wins the full season. But Jake wins the advantage. Austin ends up winning the immunity. I'll let you start with thoughts on how this all goes down, the two games that they play, the performances, any of it. Take it wherever you want. But what were your
Yeah.
thoughts coming out of the initial portion of this episode?
I liked that that his advantage was it was enough to give you a head start. It wasn't enough to win you the game, even without like him missing the key when he went back when he scaled up and had to come back for it. That like it sucked to see. As soon as it dropped and he ran, I was like, damn it. But he got back into it and then of course went back out of it again. But I I mean, it's proof like how much your brain is just mush by that point in the game, even without a 39-day season. Like I don't I don't foresee Jake making that mistake on like day 3. Like that's an end of the game mistake. And I think that everybody did really well on it.
I like first off that they do the when there's only 5 of them left, there's only so much talking on the beach and like strategizing. And so
Mm,
it turns into like a lot of competition in the final episode, but I'm good with that. And so like I like that they have the game on the beach to determine an advantage just to then go to the immunity challenge. I'm like good with them filling the time in with that. I loved that Jake was rewarded for having the appropriate strategy. It's a
yeah.
counting challenge. Like it's counting a bunch of small things that there's trying to make difficult to count. You don't got to run. You certainly don't need to be working together, Austin and D, but we don't even need to get into that because we'll talk a lot about them and their work together by the end of this podcast. So I liked that Jake won by being the only one who was like, I'm not as fast as them, but I also don't think it's smart to like try to go fast. I'm just going to try to get it right. And
Yeah.
if no one else gets it right, I'll win. And that's what happens. The advantage is legit. They did a good job of picking. Like
Yeah.
this should be really helpful, but not to the point of like you can't lose.
Right.
But he still, I mean, he does blow it. Like to be fair, I don't know. He might still have lost because Austin was a lot faster on the puzzle than he was, but forgetting the keys and then losing the puzzle piece
Yeah.
definitely did because he nailed the thing was he took advantage of his advantage by he made his second attempt on the
Yeah, I
shot to
think
get
so.
one. And so it was like at that moment he had a big time advantage over Austin who was in second. And so he did he did blow it as tough it is to say because I just love Jake so much and I'm gonna wait to potentially get emotional until I talk about the port in the episode where I kind of got pretty emotional over
Probably
Jake.
where I did.
But thankfully there was somewhat of a good there was good ending eventually
Yeah.
to the Jake saga here. But the only thing is if Jake would have won it dramatically changes the episode, I think. I don't know if it means D doesn't ultimately win. I think it for sure means different people are sitting there at the end with different arguments because if he wins and then he can be much more open of like, well, I won, so I can tell everyone I have an idol and I can be a little more chaotic of like, I have
Yeah.
an idol. Obviously, I should play it. There's no why
Who
would I
wants
not
it?
play it? But like I could play it for anyone. And now you don't know, and you could cause some more chaos, and who knows where that leads. So I was bummed both for Jake, obviously, to kind of blow it there, but also bummed for us, the viewer, of like, I think his chances of successfully making an interesting move and using the idol were diminished quite a bit when he didn't actually get the win. So I was a little bummed to see that. And it obviously didn't put a damper on the episode by any means, but it as the episode
It
ramped
hurt.
up and I was like, I'm hoping for the best case scenario or the most interesting result every single time.
Yeah.
And the most interesting result was not feeling bad for Jake again and feeling like now that's the odds were stacked against him, Katurah, and Julie to do anything towards Austin and D.
Yeah, and I will also say like major props to Jake in addition for to like succinctly counting everything, going his own speed, everything like that. That's all great. But associating the numbers with the
Yes.
season of Survivor and the winner, so you're not trying to remember 3 numbers, you're just remembering 3 names.
Yeah.
Like
And it's memory
so
tricks like
good.
that work really, really well. He's going to
Yeah,
remember them now because he did.
yeah. And like it was funny because as he was naming them off, I was naming off the winners. And then the people who I was watching with was like, of course you would.
Would
I'm like,
it
yeah, like
it would have been amazing if he was, like, wrong about one. Like, he got the numbers right and everything in the end, but in his mind, like, season whatever winner was this person. It was like, "Jake,
yeah,
you're wrong, but, like, you're gonna put the right number in at the end." But so it'll be
yeah,
funny when Tubman's like, "No, that was 34, not 35 or whatever." But,
that'd be
no,
hilarious.
he was correct, and yeah, I was very impressed, and I knew, true historians like yourself would be very, very much enjoy that moment, as did I.
Yeah.
So yeah, Austin is safe going into the first vote, and Jake has an idol, but some more disappointment. And that takes us to storyline number two. So then the first vote comes, and it essentially comes down to, D doesn't want to vote for Julie, but is comfortable if Austin does.
Yep.
And her name is out there. And Jake has told Austin in at the sanctuary because Jake or Austin picked Jake to go to the sanctuary, which I think we don't even really need to discuss. I think that was just the right decision and
Common
also
sense.
kind of
Yeah.
like the kind decision to do. And so he's told Austin about the idol, says he's playing it for himself. He eventually tells Katurah about the idol, says he's playing it for himself, tells everyone not to tell Dee and Julie, which obviously everyone tells everyone everything at this point, and especially like you're telling Austin, he's going to tell Dee everything. Has no one learned yet? No one does learn until it's all over and said and done.
I
But
do love those cuts though, where somebody says, "Don't tell this person," and then it just always cuts to some that person telling the person they're not supposed to.
yeah, I'm like, editing team, didn't hasn't Jake been through enough? Like, you didn't need this. You didn't need this
No.
moment's funny, but given everything he's went through and you've shown us of him on the season, do we need that too? Like, leave the guy alone. But yeah, so everyone knows he has an idol. He wants to, he's, saying, I'm going to play it on myself because, you guys have tried to vote me out a bunch before, and why not? Like, I don't know what else to do. So I'm
Yeah.
just going to play it on myself. Don't vote for me. And so everything's setting up for Jake and Katurah. If Jake could just not pitch rocks, if they could just be honest with each other, if they could just trust each other to take out whoever they want, because Jake's got this idol, and people are finally realizing Julie and Dee are the people they should be going to. But Jake, well, first off, Julie doesn't want Dee. Let's talk about that first, because that was shocking enough to, and I thought bad strategy enough to talk about before we discuss Jake and Katurah totally fumbling the bag here. Julie is approached about taking D out and says no, says the
Hmm.
jury isn't going to respect me if I don't like respect one of my relationships. And so I'm not going to vote for D. And also, I'm kind of just like tired and over it. And Jake is, D will say yes to Jake. So, like, let's just vote Jake out.
Yeah.
And then also is the only one that's like, Jake doesn't have an idol. He's lying. It's like, he's people have seen it. He's
Yeah.
not, but like you seem like day 25 was your limit, Julie. You seem pretty checked out. So are you in agreement with me that this is ludicrous from Julie to just be like, no, I'm not voting D out? And also it's not just because like I don't want to do it, it's because I think the jury like will respect me if I don't vote her out more. I didn't get it at all.
Yeah. Like, I guess there's a couple of levels to it. For one, I think that Austin was also smart taking Jake because it keeps Jake and Katurah separate for presumably just long enough that it's going to be harder for them to strategize when they come back together.
Mhm.
I think that was really smart. In
And you're
addition to
gonna
just,
know all of Jake's plan
yeah,
because, as Austin says, I mostly brought Jake because he's gonna tell me everything he knows, and then Jake tells him everything he knows.
yeah. Even though like that was apparently part of Jake's plan, where I'm going to tell everybody and then flip it.
Yeah.
And it could have worked in theory with some other information provided. But as far as Julie goes, like she is so focused on the fact that she's blindsided people that she truly cares about that it then sort of created this blinder as to she is a lawyer, so she would be able to advocate for herself and explain her game fairly well. She probably thinks that Julie and her had a or so Julie and Dee had a lot of similar moves. So it would be splitting votes at the end. But if she can tell the story better, then she might be able to do it. Um, Personally, I, as a jury member, would respect the move more of I'm taking out D because she is my biggest threat to win this game, and I have to put my friendship and my emotions aside. Um, Counter argument, it's Katurah's plan, not Julie's plan. And if Katurah is also sitting at the end, she can easily say that was actually my idea, not yours. So I,
Yeah, it's
I
tough
would
either
take
way.
out D, but I I see why she didn't, but I think I would take her out. I think I'd have to.
Yeah, I think she got caught up in the emotions which is going to be a common theme of there was two folks at the Re before who didn't get caught up in the emotions, one of which ends up winning, one of which was the first of those four to go out, and the other
Yep.
two did get caught up in emotions a little bit, and I think Julie was feeling bad enough, and especially after like they had three tribal councils in a row where Jeff basically the only thing they talked about was like, so do you guys care? Like, is like the emotions and the friendship versus the
Yeah.
being a savage. And it seemed like Julie, with each passing day, was a little more like, did this to some people, but I'm not doing it to like the number one person who I actually like have a mother daughter relationship. Everyone else calls me Mama J, but like I actually feel like a mother
Yeah.
figure and best friend to this woman, and I don't want to do that. And so yeah, and she definitely could have maybe won at the end versus D. Would have been an interesting battle, but I still think she should have targeted her because you should target the person who has the best odds of winning. That's
Yeah.
just the most straightforward good strategy, but it shouldn't have mattered because D should have went home, not Julie, because Jake and Katurah talk about we can do something here.
Yep.
And Jake tells Katurah he has an idol, but does one thing is as much as I want to say Katurah blew it by changing her vote at the last second, which she did. She potentially, I don't know if she lost $1 million, but she's handed D $1 million in that
Yeah.
moment. But Jake also didn't tell Katurah. He said, I have an idol, but he didn't say, I'm going to play it for you. Everyone
Yeah.
else thinks I'm playing it for me. Can you please keep that one bit of info? Like you tell everyone else and everything else, leave the part out of it that I'm going to play it for you. That would have ultimately made her safe, more safe than I guess her. It was a very funny back and forth of like, swear on someone. Didn't know, just anyone. I don't know. What about my Nana? Oh, good enough. Like,
Yeah.
good. Thank you. Like, you made me swear on my Nana. Like, what the hell? They just can't trust each other. And at the last second, Katurah, which they did a great job of showing us, her have that moment of like, she legitimately switched her decision
Yeah.
as she stood there with the pen and paper. And I think that was the moment I literally wrote in my note. D just won $1 million,
Yep.
and whether Katurah was the one that would have won if she votes D out, I think she probably could have. I think she has a 50-50 shot at that point if she actually votes D and D goes home there of
Yeah.
Katurah being the winner out of those final four. So it was pretty painful moment, but the smile on D's face couldn't have been bigger because I think she kind of realized it too. And everyone else, it took until the next immunity challenge to really sink in when she wins, but I think everyone kind of knew in that moment, fuck, a
Yeah.
mistake was made here. And that mistake just cost four of us $1 million and gave it to the other person.
Yeah. And I see that chain of events going. They vote out D, which is like a magnificent move,
Hmm.
clearly because she won. But also, just if you're looking at those people without knowing that D won, you still take out D because she is that huge threat. I think that if D is out of the equation, Austin wins immunity, then he takes. I could see him taking Jake
He definitely
and
takes
then
Jake.
putting Katurah and Julie to fire.
He either takes, well, actually, if D goes out and Austin wins the next immunity, I think Austin would have put himself versus Julie in fire. And because he
I
seemed
could see
I
that.
don't remember. They made it seem like Austin was the greatest fire maker in the history of fire making or whatever. I know
Yeah.
by that point in the episode, he's like actively really wants because like kind of feels like he needs to get in there. But was there a lot of did we get a lot of like Austin's really good at fire or anything? But they
We got
they
more
all
Julie's
seemed
really good at fire.
yeah, we had that. But so I think there's a chance if it's those final four, he's like, I'm not worried about Jake, but
Yeah.
I am a little worried about Katurah, Julie, and I kind of almost maybe he would have went the route of like, I need to throw myself in and beat them. And then if I do, I'm like for sure going to win. And if I don't, I might have lost to them anyways. Um, but yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
pretty even between him, Julian, Katurah if D's not there.
Yeah, and it's just like it's one of those things, man. Like it's so I don't know that I've had a situation watching Survivor lately that it's been so crystal clear that one decisive moment shifted the entire rest of the game. Um, Other than I guess like maybe D telling Julie to play the idol and taking out Emily at that point. But
But that's still too
that mo
early to be like,
yeah,
there's so many chances. That was the moment where we're like, okay, so D's not going to win because she obviously they're gonna one of the next three chances they have,
yeah.
they're gonna find a way to get her out. They should all see this and know this. And they will talk later when we do the season awards, and I'll do the full recap of all of the the succession of moves that went awry that aided in D's victory to not take anything away from D's victory, which I will explain more of that here when we get to it. But yeah, Katura makes the ill-advised switch at the end. Julie goes home, still a threat out of the game, obviously, but at this point, they're all threats to some degree. Even Jake, if this would have worked, would have had at least something to grasp onto that it was like me and
Yeah.
Katura who did this. And so like there's something there for him to grab onto, but instead we head to a final four of D, Austin, Jake, and Katura, and D completely and utterly in control.
I do have a question though.
What's that?
I think that Jeff hurt Jake's game, and I want to get your take on it.
Okay, let's do that now.
So we go to tribal at five.
At five.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we like immediately talks to Jake per the edit and says, "You got an advantage," and you immediately squandered it, forgot the key, and then goes a little bit further. But he said, "But then you're back in it, and you're doing the puzzle, and you're neck and neck with Austin, and then you misplace the piece or don't see the piece and you lose." And like Jake flat out said, "Thanks, Jeff. I'm just happy I didn't have to recap it all myself." But Jeff is Jeff is giving a play-by-play of Jake like underperforming at the immunity challenge for the jury instead of nobody else won but Austin. But Jake is the one that he focused on and pointed out two specific instances in a very necessary immunity challenge in front of the jury about how Jake mishandled it. And I didn't really notice as much the first watch, but on the second watch, I was like, he really threw Jake under the bus in that situation. Like, I know that Jake would have had like a huge uphill climb final tribal regardless, but for Jeff to just kind of like point out, you had an advantage, you squandered it, you got back into it, you messed it up again. I was like,
Yeah.
seriously.
I mean, but well, one, I think Jeff is always, trying to lean into any
Mhm.
storylines, which is, his job more or
Oh
less.
yeah.
And the Jake kind of fumbling his way through things, it was a definite storyline. But also he Jeff especially this season, I feel like he even more so wanted to do those recaps for the jury like more
Yeah.
than ever before, or more direct of like, let me quickly recap everything that happened since the last time we were sitting here, just so whether we end up
Yeah.
talking about it or not, the jury kind of knows the process of things. And so yeah, it's obviously, sucks for Jake, who's like, I wish maybe we could have avoided mentioning some of those things. And then maybe whoever gets sent home doesn't tell everyone at Ponderosa exactly how, Austin won and or I lost that or whatever. But I think he's got to mention that like there was an advantage thing, you won that, and then yeah, I don't know. I
Didn't
I
pull out
get
the
I
win.
get where you're coming from. It's not very nice, but I don't think there was. I think it was. I don't know if necessary is an appropriate word, but it was. It's just part of it. Like that's gonna happen. We're gonna
Yeah.
we're gonna recant everything, and unfortunately, the story was yet again some issues on Jake's part that maybe or maybe did not cost him the win on
Yeah.
that challenge. So we move then to the next immunity challenge at Final Four, and they go basically right to it, and D wins, and therefore at this point, I was convinced was had locked up no matter what else happened at that part. Like D now wins the $1 million. And I thought the other three definitely had the same feeling I did because in the
Yeah.
moment, their faces after she wins are pretty, pretty resolute and like, oh, well, okay, we've
Good
got the
game.
next 36 hours to still like spend doing all of this stuff. But I think we all know where this is probably going here. The final challenge, I liked the final challenge.
Me too.
D completely dominated it. I mean, a flawless run. And, that's asking a lot to go flawless in one of these
Yeah.
challenges. They're expecting people to drop a couple of times and this to take a lot longer than it did. And they maybe weren't expecting someone to break the challenge as Jake does, which is the start of where I started feeling really sad about the the edit and everything. We'll touch on that in a minute. But did you like the final challenge? And were you as resolute as I was of once it was over of like, well, we know the end result of this episode now. We just get to fill in
Yeah.
the blanks of how we get from here to the end.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, I really liked the challenge. It's a bit of a mix of a couple of different challenges, and I like that. It reminded me a lot of the one that they did in Healers Hustlers when you had to spell out the name of the show, like the name of the season, by going through that with the pieces. Um, and I like it because it's not the same standing thing where you go through the whole way like they did on 43 with where Owen got mad and he bent the thing at the end,
Yeah, this is now becoming and it's funny that it's Jake and Owen
right?
together. But it's becoming a little bit of a tradition of the
Yeah.
person who's just trying like hell to grasp at having one thing. Can I just have one thing before I sit there and don't get any votes at the end and them breaking to some degree a challenge at the end?
Yeah. And proof that they really make sure that the challenges are going to work for everyone. Because like D is shorter. She had just enough height to get that last one on. It wasn't a matter of she was too short and couldn't do it and had to be at a really weird angle. She was able to put it on while standing at full height with their hands up, and it wasn't a huge challenge. And I don't think that it would have necessarily been like easier for Austin, but it was nice to see that that was taken into consideration. And they did mention it on, I think, on Fire as well. How that had like that is one of the things that they do take into consideration is how tall everyone is. So they find that perfect balance where it's even for everyone. Um, and as
So
a
that's
short person, I
interesting.
appreciate that.
You say that, and that I did not listen to On Fire, but I listened to Tyson, Pod Has Spoken, and always the arbiter of fairness on Survivor, which I love and has become my own little bit throughout the season of like
Yep.
just making sure that, Survivor isn't perfect either, just because they're better than the other shows. They're not perfect. And he brought up that it's interesting. They thought like we found a way to even this out based on the height or whatever. He talked about how it's not at all. It's another one where it's like, yes, it would have taken a pretty ridiculous amount of work to like make it as even as possible, but
Yeah.
that like the height difference mattered mostly of who's it actually easier for to step in and out of the holes the whole way down. If you're taller, if
Yeah.
Drew would have been in this and like your legs clear this way easier, but it's like more effort to lift, more body up or whatever, or like was D the perfect height and like big feet versus smaller feet. And they like made a funny reference of like, D's got that big toe, that it didn't cost her, but it, can because those things were the same size holes to step in as everyone
Yeah.
had. And then, yeah, the end part of like, yeah, if Drew, again, hypothetically was in this and was way taller, it would be easier in theory for him to put the top couple on because he didn't have to do what D did of holding it straight up over her head.
Right.
Um, but yeah, it wasn't totally size adjusted, but it was, they were
Size
saying
intended.
yeah, they were saying that in jest of like, well, it would be a little extreme to like, all right, let's measure everyone's feet and then their height and come up with some equation that your squares are this big to step in and this high and everything else. That would have been a lot, but
Yes.
I just, to finish my bit for the season, it's not perfectly fair every time, but there's no way to make it perfectly fair. So D gets the win. Really, it was, I mean, I was a little disappointed. Austin was the first to like drop and was just trying to go way too fast,
Yeah.
which was not, was not the good strategy. You can't speed up until you have to. If you're forced to, if someone's ahead of you and gets to like 3 cups left or something, speed up, great,
Yeah.
or not, because that's also the position of like just wait out and your only hope is they drop. And if you're putting pressure on them, maybe they will. But he tries to go too fast and was out of it. And then Jake was it's one of those things where it's always because Jake does well enough to get in the position to kind of fail, you know? It's
Yeah.
not like he was just like in last and like an afterthought. Like there was a couple of the last challenges Julie was in where like she was just behind the whole time.
Yeah.
And it wasn't and like we don't feel bad for Julie at the end or anything. It's just like, we weren't really paying attention to her. That she was just kind of behind. And it was like in this one, it was yet again like I was at the beginning, it was D and Jake were locked in. D was like half a round ahead of him, but they were
Yeah.
basically tied. And then he has the moment where he knocks it and it doesn't fall. And you're like, holy shit, something went right for Jake. This is amazing. And then obviously he ultimately knocks it and then knocks it again and gets yelled at by Jeff and says, fuck you, Jeff, and steps on all over it. And then tries to put it back together afterwards. And it's suddenly very sad again. And it's just like, it didn't
Yeah.
have to be this way. Couldn't you have just lost? Like lose normal. Don't get close and then lose. But D wins and ultimately probably is going to win the whole thing, but there's still more to talk about. So let's move to the fire making then. So this is the moment where I started getting really emotional and really worked up. And it was in the air that I was not going to be able to finish the episode and that I might never watch Survivor again because and it was made even more because I happened when I was watching this, I was watching in my home office as I typically do. That's my computer is my television in my home more often than not. And my wife came in to for some reason or whatever, and it was right at as they were sitting down at tribal council to make fire. And
Yeah.
she like saw that I was clearly emotional. And so I paused the episode and I recapped Jake's entire story leading up to that moment, which made it even worse because going into that, and he talks at length about it of just like, I need to win something. He talks
Yeah.
about before and after, like, we've all watched Jake's season. We all know how it's happened. We just have referenced it 3 different times in this episode already of like failed this after failed that, but getting close enough to make the failure stand out and hurt or to fumble this, fumble that. And I am loving him being clearly being such an awesome dude and just loving him and
Yeah.
rooting for him and how hard it's gotten to watch moment after moment of it just not go the right way. And so I was like, dude, if he loses this fire, am just it's just so devastating. And I was like tearing up in advance because I thought he was gonna lose. I thought they were setting it up for like Jake's final loss, and I was just gonna be
Yeah.
torn up. And then I had to recount to I paused it without knowing what was about to happen and told my wife the whole story of Jake. And she was then like locked in of like, please God, let this guy win. Like that woman looks really nice too. You haven't told me about her. I bet she's great, but please let Jake win. And we watched it and he won. And if he wouldn't have, I legitimately don't think I would have finished the episode. I would have like started crying and I would have been like, I don't want to watch this anymore. And I don't think I'll have someone tell me if D won or not, but I don't think I'm going to ever finish the episode. I was just so distraught and then so happy afterwards of like, thank goodness, like the guy gets
Yeah.
something, he deserves it more than anyone else. And I'm glad, he has the emotional discussion after of like, my confidence is shattered and I needed that or else the pieces might have stayed on the floor. Um, so I'm guessing this was similar. You referenced earlier you were similarly
Yes.
emotional over this this time, and as the number one Jake fan that you are, I'm guessing you had some similar reactions.
I do. Yeah, when he won and he was having that conversation with Jeff, it's like I could not deal with it because I relate so much to Jake in like that situation. And just to watch him like get it right, to have his flames still be like burning in the back the entire time. And he had like a good fire, and it looked like he wasn't going to when they were building up to it. They did a really good job of burying the lead on it. And yeah, like watching him go, and then even though it was only for a second, seeing Katurah get stuck first, and it catch first, I was like, oh God. Like, and I love Katurah as well. Like, this was like my worst case scenario of having the two of them
Yeah,
fighting
it's
each other.
horrible that she had
Um,
to be the one on the receiving end of this because I'm like, I'm sorry, Katurah, you could have been anyone in the entire world, and
yeah,
I wouldn't have been rooting for you because like Jake just needed to win this, like
yeah.
needed to win this.
I loved it when Jeff asked like what what his mindset was like going into that. And he just deadpan looked at Jeff and he was just like, I'm making a fire, I'm burning a rope, doing it as fast as possible. That's what's up. And I
Yeah.
was like, that is like he
He
is
was both
so
locked in
locked
and
in.
trying to hold it together at the same
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
And I loved it. Like probably I know that we've had fast fire makers the last couple of seasons and they've just been getting progressively faster. I don't care. It could have taken them all night and I would not care and it would not diminish how great that was for Jake to get it done.
Yeah. It was one of the moments of the season for sure. And it
Yeah.
sucks that, yeah, it does come at the detriment of Katurah getting to be in the final because I will say I was so thrilled and excited that during that tribal council leading up to the fire making itself, Katurah, which I don't remember too many people doing, not at least as aggressively as
Mm,
she did and
yes.
as well as she did, but she was at final tribal council already.
Yep.
She was openly turning to the jury and making like final tribal council style pitches, throwing D, knowing that like if I get there, D's the one I've got to beat. So like let me start now. Let me start
Yeah.
saying why I'm more deserving than D. Let me paint the picture of D's scared of me because she thinks I'm
Such a
gonna win.
badass.
And I'm just like, dude, all right. She finally brought the lawyer out, and I love that you're doing it now. This is so smart. Like, this is giving you a path to victory if you beat him in the fire, and she ultimately doesn't.
Yeah.
But I shout out to her for realizing like you don't have to wait till final tribal council to like make your case. Like, I'm gonna
Yeah.
start it right now. I'm gonna take advantage. Like, I'm gonna make you feel like you made the wrong decision by putting me in fire. You should have just brought me with you, and I'm gonna use it to my advantage. So that
It
was
was so
fantastic
good.
from her.
So good.
I just
And
really wish. I mean, there's no version of Jake versus Austin in Fire. There was maybe a version of Austin weaseling his way in there versus Katurah, but
yeah.
it would have been. I think it would have been really fun. Is I would never want it because again, I literally needed Jake to win this thing, or else I might not watch Survivor ever again. But it would have been a very interesting final tribal if Katurah would have been there as a third person who clearly would have been able to, whether her case was
Yeah.
more deserving or not, would have been able to make it seem like it was on par or better, and would have made for, I think, the first in the new era, like true three people could win here, three people get votes at least, because I think
Yeah.
someone would have voted for her. So it was a bummer to see her go, but thank God Jake won, and we get one more day in tribal council with Jake being the third wheel to D and Austin. So that takes us to the final day on the beach. They have the final breakfast. They're reminiscing. I enjoyed that they went through the. I always liked back when they did like the journey, like the walk, and they passed
Me
by
too. A
everyone's
lot.
torch, and we got the little moment with everyone. They did kind of a different spin on that where we
Yeah.
got every jury member one at a time in order talking about one of the players but also kind of referencing their own game in it and just getting a moment to remember both of them. Mozzie.
Whatever. She
Hopefully
was
that
like,
was
"You
nothing
do not
important.
need to be hydrated right now," and she just like drop kicked my water bottle across the room.
Oh, did it spill everywhere, or
I
is
don't
it
think
a
so.
sealed lid? Oh,
It's
nice.
it's got a straw on the top, but it's got like a really good seal
Hmm.
around the straw. Um, so if I see it start to leak, I'll go get it. But
Okay, wonderful.
right now I'm good.
So, and then we ultimately get to, we just pretty much get straight to the final tribal council. It's a fun little memory lane thing, but we're at the final tribal, and I go in obviously thinking there's no way D's going to lose,
Yeah.
but I did not feel that way for the entirety of the final tribal council, which I was thrilled about that we got a little bit of drama. And I'm
Hmm.
interested to see if you feel similar as I do
Yeah.
as far as how it went down. The first couple questions are kind of whatever. And then the third and fourth people to ask questions are Drew and Emily. And on both of their questions in the subsequent responses, Emily's, which was specifically D, I need you just to say one time where like
Yeah.
you and only you did something. Like, can you give me a succinct response to your best move, your whatever? And in those third and fourth responses, I thought D had really like bad answers as far as like like she had good things she could have said and just didn't, like gave poor answers. And Austin on the other side went on the full offensive, was the first to like kind of like say something against D and
Yeah.
like put himself over her versus like just playing nice and only talking about yourself. And his case sounded legit. He laid out really well. I think his like strongest point was, when we were split up, me and Drew actually had to like do something because we weren't with four Reba members in a new 6-person tribe, and those two didn't,
Yeah.
and like making that distinction. And in that moment, after then Emily asked D direct and her answer is just kind of not great back, I'm like, holy shit, like Austin, maybe I was wrong. Maybe Austin can win this because D is blowing this right now, kind of. And then it all turned when the next question, it flipped entirely. And I thought Austin blew that specific answer. And D finally got to the thing that mattered the most, which is I told Austin told me in the moment that mattered, and that's why Emily, you're sitting over there. And I didn't tell him in the moment that mattered. And Drew, that's why you're sitting over there. And his emotions got caught up in it, and mine did not. And that's why I should win. And Austin like doesn't have much to say against it and doesn't have a good argument back. And it completely flips back to like, yes, she should win. She is the best player here. And that moment is the most consequential of all of it, and now it kind of got laid to bear. But
Yeah.
there was leading up to that question, I was like, holy shit, like she's kind of blowing it and Austin's kind of winning this thing.
I still didn't think that I thought that Austin might get a vote or two, but I still wasn't really high on Austin's supply like during final. And I think it was because Jake was getting so much respect from the jury that I could see it possibly going a different way. But as far as D goes, I actually thought funny that questions like 3 and 4 were the ones where you're like, I don't know. Questions 1 and 2 were the ones where I was like, I don't know if she's got this
But yeah, it
because
was
she
really the first
co-opted.
four, all
Yeah,
the
she
first five.
co-opted their answers where she was like, I agree with what you're saying, and I have a similar thing to say, and then would add a little bit, and then the same with Austin. I found where she hit her stride was when Austin was talking about, and it was like one succinct moment. It was where Austin was talking about Drew and him roping in Emily and strengthening the Reba 4 with an extra member. And D kind of countered that with, yeah, and I did the exact same thing with Katurah, and that's why we're able to get where we were, was we both were able to do that. So while Austin spoke about it better, she basically said, yeah, but that's a vote. That's a point for both of us because we both did the exact same thing. And then she went into like, you're here because of this, you're here because of this. And her telling Austin at Final Tribal that she told Julie just after he said, I
That
know
was the
that she
moment.
did not tell Julie. I
Yeah,
was like, cool.
that was it.
Enjoy. Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Enjoy
like, wait a
second
minute.
place.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, I also really liked that Drew of all people was the one who told Jake that he wasn't giving himself enough credit and really like upped his gameplay because he and Drew were the ones that sort of like went back and forth a little bit and kind of went toe to toe. But for Drew to just be like, you're not giving yourself enough credit. This is what you did, and this is how we see your game. Um, like I think that Final Tribal, despite not winning, probably went best for Jake as a person, as a player, versus like D, who obviously won.
yeah, I think they all knew none of them were gonna vote for Jake, and they all loved him, and so it was very easy for them all to be like, we can all allow ourselves to like pump him up and like
Yeah,
talk in the best light possible because it's not going to sway any of our opinions or like change something where afterwards we're like, wait a minute, like I know we all like the guy, but did he win because we all wanted to be nice to him and it felt bad or something, So I think they were just all on the same page of great human, not going to get any votes, so like let's pump him up and like tell him how he deserves to be here and everything else, which
yeah.
was lovely and I definitely appreciated.
Well, and I also don't I think that the same thing that happened on season 40, Winners at War, kinda happened here, where they didn't want one person to win, right? Like, so, like, the people who voted D, they didn't want Austin to win. That's why they voted for D.
Mhm.
But any vote that went to Jake at that point was also potentially awarding D or Austin,
Yeah,
depending
the
on what
person they
side you
didn't want to
sat.
win. Yeah.
Yeah, because it was gonna come down once they realized it was gonna be close, and they probably knew that going in because they're the jury, like, they probably had at least one conversation about it. Um, I really think that one of the main reasons that Jake didn't get, like, a single vote, and probably why we've been seeing more of, like, 0 vote finalists in the new era, is because they don't want to accidentally give somebody a vote and then crown
That
a
change.
different
Yeah.
winner.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You don't want that third party candidate costing yours just because you didn't like your party's nominee and you vote for the third party, and then
yeah,
suddenly you still would have taken your party's nominee over the other one, and now now you cost yourself a little bit. Totally.
exactly.
The other two final things to discuss here, or three things actually. The first one that I didn't totally understand, and maybe she spoke about it during the reunion immediately after. I feel it's weird to call it a reunion when like they're just, the post show, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Or maybe you've seen or read anything or listened to interviews after since the episode. But Emily hates men or hates Austin or something, because when she plays her vote, I think I had it written down. What does she say? She votes for D and says, "Don't you dare spend a dime of this on that man," referring to Austin. And then like is just, and I'm like, wait, you were such buddy buddy with Austin and Drew. D is the one that got you out of the game, and now you're like full blown. And Emily is also the one that, as much as the moment where D says, Austin, actually, you're wrong. I did tell Julie, and that's the moment. But Emily brings it back in Austin's face near the end of the tribal, where they like ask about the showmance directly. Julie asks about it, and and Emily straight up after Austin's answer is like, no, 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 no. It was weakness that you told D. Like he like says you were weak to his face or whatever. So like, where did that come from? When did Emily start, why does she have this like vendetta against Austin suddenly, or against men? We've learned earlier in the season, she's decided maybe she would get married finally to the man she's been with for a long time and is going to spend her whole life with, which I actually support people who are like, we can live together our whole lives without getting married. That's a totally different podcast. But do you have any inclination as to why Emily suddenly hates Austin's guts?
I don't, but I don't think she necessarily hated him so much as she said when she left the game that she was going to be awarded the best player, and then solidified by D's responses at Final Tribal, and probably even accentuated by the fact that Emily doesn't really play with emotions. She's very like fact based. So the fact that D was able to do that against Austin, not tell him, and like to go to that point, whereas Austin did play a more emotional game. I think that that's where that came from. And also just a matter of like, you won this, it's your money. Don't spend it on anyone else, except for obviously family. But yeah, to say
Unless
if
they're a
you,
man.
yeah, if you dare spend, I think it was if you dare spend a penny on that boy, I'm gonna fly down to Miami, and I think she said like take it back or whatever. Now she is also a financial analyst, so that could have something to do with it. But no, I think it was just like a matter of yeah, there's a showmance, but like this is yours.
Yeah. Well, to wrap a bow on that part first, villain Emily strikes back to end the season the same way she came in, and I love every second of it. My feelings for Austin notwithstanding, I don't know that he deserved it, but I loved it every second of it from Emily. And it also goes to show she is the rational, logical one
Yep.
who maybe just got excited to be able to like call out the clear rational logic of like she's better than you because we just you tried to deny it, but we all heard the thing that just went down. But also, she's the only one that saw what I started to see in the second to last episode, in the finale episode, and it broke my heart to some degree, and it totally came to fruition. Austin got played. Deed was not. It's all bullshit. Dee's a savage. I love it. It's amazing. It's what this show needs. But spoiler alert, they're not together. They want to claim to kind of be together, but it's low key or whatever. I've read all the reports. I've seen all the interviews where they dodge the questions and they're like, it's low key. We're, we live in different places, whatever. I'm not hearing any of it. That's D. D is not interested in a relationship with this man. D was interested in winning $1 million and she took advantage of it. And I'm sure she loved the attention and did enjoy the long conversation on the beach. I'm not saying there was no genuine parts of it, but I think Austin fell in love with a girl and a girl fell in love with winning $1 million and won because of it and being able to be a savage. And I think Emily was the one who saw that plain as day during, was got all the emotion out of there and was like, no, 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 no. She thinks he's cute and fun and likes talking to it, but she objective number one has remained for her, whereas for him, he kind of got mixed objective number ones out of this and started
Right.
talking Rob and Amber. And she was like, I would like to win. Amber did win, but I don't need a ring, and I don't really need you afterwards as anything more than a good friend who helped me get this $1 million. So I think she played him, and I standing ovation for it.
I think that she was able to play a more like separate game where I don't doubt how they felt for one another, but also she was in it to win. That was her ultimate goal. She had her family in mind, and I think it was, I want to say it was Jesse that said it, but your alliance is the people that you have at home that you came at, like you left to go play.
Yeah,
So her alliance is always going to be her family, but I wouldn't be surprised if they are trying to figure stuff out because they did seem to jive well and they're in a lot of the photos from like the live watch parties and stuff like that. They're usually like connected at the hip. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what becomes of it. For me, the big thing, just to go back to the Emily thing for a minute, was in addition to her being able to say like you played with emotion, you played strategy, would also be kind of like, hey, jury, instead of addressing the jury directly, saying like, vote based on fact, don't vote based on emotion.
mhm.
That D is the one who played arguably the best game out of the three people sitting here. So don't vote with emotion just because you like Austin and you think he's a great guy. And it kind of goes back to when Boston Rob won. And one of the guys from the jury got up at the start and said, like, look, if you don't vote for Rob, then you're not voting for Rob because you're vindictive and you're bitter. He played a better game than all of us. That's why he's there and we're all over here. So a vote for anyone but Rob does a disservice to his game. And I sort of feel like that was obviously much more low key, but I feel that that's what she was kind of going for, especially where all throughout any time that she's talked about who she will vote for, it's always been the best player, and that's what she's kind of advocated for. So I almost see it as like another step towards that of like vote with your brain, don't vote with your heart.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I'm being a little facetious. I don't uh, she did not I don't think she played him in a vindictive,
Oh no.
villainous way, although I clearly, if you've listened to this whole season, I'm rooting for that to be a real thing that someone does. I think, we both said it, and you said it very well, of just she kept priority 1 game first, and that could all
Yeah.
happen, but when it came to make decisions, that was put to the side and ignored, and he did not. He mixed the 2, and that was ultimately the downfall for him and the winning ingredient for her. And I do obviously hope them the best, and I would love to see a real friendship, a relationship, whatever else. So, but I just have to have a little fun. So I hyperbolize it to make it seem really fun and crazy and wild reality television stuff in my head. But this is Survivor, and it doesn't usually have that. Johnny Fairplay was a long, long time ago now, and I don't know that we're ever going to get something of that level again, not on this show at least. But that takes me to the final point. I kind of referenced earlier when we were talking about the Jake Austin immunity challenge. That I kind of felt like Jake lost as much as Austin won. That is an analogy, a sports analogy that's used a lot when talking about like a game or a match of like, if one team that was maybe better but had a lot of unforced errors or whatever. And it's like that
Yeah.
team kind of lost more than a team won, or like that team won that game versus like they weren't given anything like that. I want it to be very clear that D was absolutely the 100% best player this season. And I think like a really high level, great survivor player. And I'm
Yeah.
thrilled that we got a season where that person actually wins, because in the modern era, especially, I think that person, it's become incredibly difficult for that person who is clearly not only the best player in that particular game, but also seems to just have the skill set that would make them an amazing survivor player on any given season. It's really tough for that person to actually win. Jesse, I think, is the standout
Yeah.
example of that, of like, it's just really hard to get through that kind of 6-5-4 range when you are clearly the best player. And D had the most moves under her belt, was just the most well-rounded, won some challenges, had a great social standing with everyone, not just her alliance, but everyone across the board, had made the right moves every time, the whole thing. She was absolutely fantastic. She won this season, and I'm thrilled she won, and she deserves it 110%. However, she did that we I say that, it's hard for that person in the position she was in to get through 6-5-4. And
Yeah.
the reason I feel like she did, where the Jessies of the last 5 seasons have not, is because a bunch of mistakes were made to help her survive that portion, which ultimately gives me the result I want of seeing the best person win again.
Yeah.
But it does need to be pointed out that Drew didn't need to tell Austin, who didn't need to tell D, and that would have changed everything. Jake pitching rocks instead of "I have an idol and we'll use it for you." That changed everything. Katurah changing her vote when Jake again didn't say "I'll use my idol for you" changed everything. And so all three of those decisions probably end up in D going home. One of them, literally 100%, is D going home, is the switch vote
Yeah.
at the end. But those first two could have ended up in D going home, or at minimum, end up with Julie going home and D being completely on the outs from everyone else. And so it took those kind of mistakes paired with the best player actually being able to get through that final little stretch of the game that I think they have more or less designed for
Yeah.
exactly what has happened up until this season to happen, of like, you need some help at this point. Like, there either needs to be not definitively a best player, or the best player is going to need some help to survive, or have to do like incredible immunity challenge run of like, you got to basically win the last 3 or 4 in a row, because once you're in that position, it's going to be really hard to survive it. And so I'm glad D did, and I want to make sure that my opinion of she is one of the best players we've seen in the new era, and beyond a deserving winner. And I'm thrilled that the best player won, but it did also weirdly take those mistakes to kind of help her get there, and highlights how hard it is for the best player to actually win the season.
Yeah. And she even, I like that she also acknowledged that she was there by a lot of luck as well. As much as she played a good game, she was also very lucky. And I think that also stands out, as like, you don't hear that a lot at Final Tribal. Everybody tries to own every element of their game. Whereas she was like, yeah, some of it totally came down to luck. Like, I was lucky to be put in Reba, because D could have been on Lulu and they could have just like completely cannibalized and we wouldn't have seen her play. And I think I would say D is probably, well, D is the best winner of the new era, arguably one of the best players of the new era. And this cast as a whole is probably one of the best casts, I would say, of the last 10 seasons. I would have loved to have seen them play a 39-day game. I also think that it's worth noting that, and I don't know, I think it must have been in the after show rather than in the actual episode, but Jeff referenced that this group really relied on relationships more than we've seen in the past, and really worked within those relationships and sort of like used the idols and advantages as needed to either strengthen or reduce relationships, but relationships were always at the forefront. And I think that's really interesting. I think it's worth noting because pretty much everybody has said 45 is the best season of the new era. And
Yeah.
then you've got Jeff saying it's all based on relationships, which is what Survivor used to be. before we had all these idols and advantages and twists and turns and everything else. So I don't know that he'll ever acknowledge it directly, but this is probably as close as we're going to get to Survivor saying relationship based gameplay is some of the best gameplay because it also really relies on strategy and who you know, who you're working with, all of those elements. And it takes so much of the game of chance back out of it because even this season, when there were idols and advantages and things like that, they weren't really at the forefront. Caleb used his shot in the dark. Um, and I mean, D
One
like,
person leave with an idol in their pocket and Bruce.
yep.
We had Julie saved by an idol on the Emily vote, and we had Austin misuse the idol at the end, or not kind of not use the idol when Drew goes out.
And
Uh,
Drew went out without, oh, Drew let his knowledge without power or whatever the heck it's called expire.
skip the tribal, yeah, expire or
Yeah.
whatever. Uh,
So
yeah, and we had, I think you were smart enough to point out a few episodes back when I mentioned that, Jeff took a slight victory lap on, "Hey, you guys realize there's not that many idols and advantages and stuff," and that it was in part because they kept failing
yeah,
on the journeys or choosing not to play, and so there was an opportunity for some more to be involved that were either lost or not tried, but, if anything, that's, something for the production team of, like, keep making it really hard. Like, you can
yeah,
have the journey and have the idols available, but make it really hard so that some people either choose not to do it, or
or
if
fail.
they get it, they've like really earned it and you feel really good about them now having this extra
Yeah,
thing in the game and whatever. But yeah, I'm with you. I think I'm glad they subtly acknowledge, and he probably never will say straight up, "Hey, this came as close to like kind of the old version of things as, and then now everyone likes it again."
yeah,
But hopefully internally they are putting that together, realizing that, and incorporating that into the next seasons. Although, at this point they've, well, not at the, he saw all this play out and then they immediately filmed 46,
right.
but hopefully when we see 46 in a couple months here, they continued on this trend and stuck with it, and it'll make for another great season.
Hell yeah.
So with that, D gets the win. That's all for the finale portion of this recap. We will now transition into the awards section. But again, this is now going to be full season awards. So let's get our biggest trophies of the season. Let's polish them up and let's pick some winners. All righty. So, awards for the full season. We're going to run through basically the same awards that we do for an episode, but this time for the full season. See how that works? Nice and easy. So, we got quote, moment, best and worst strategy, season MVP, which is the real award we've all come here for. It's the real, that's the best picture. That's the end all be all. That's the only thing that truly matters. D might have $1 million, but does she get the Survivor Historian season MVP trophy? That's really ultimately the more honorable and respected award out there
It's true.
than the sole survivor title and $1 million. And we're also going to throw in favorite cast member, and I might even surprise Tony with a couple others that I didn't prepare him for. So let's start with best quote. And with best quote, I first have a question for you, Tony, that you might not remember this homework assignment, but hopefully if you didn't, you can think of it off the top of your head. Way back in one of the first episodes we did, I asked you to come up with who, there's a separate award. There's the best quote of the season, but then there's also the confessional king or queen of the
Yes.
season, which in the challenge world, is the only one named after someone, and is the Dan Renzi confessional king or queen of the season, because he was the first ever confessional king of the challenge world way back on season 3 and 5 and 9. And I asked you if there was someone, an OG survivor player, that could be, the award could be named after as like the best narrator, confessional king or queen. Do you have anyone that comes to mind that we could name this award for?
I mean, the Tyson Apostle Confessional
Was he
King
early
Award.
enough though? Was he OG enough? I
He's
was, it was
18.
okay. Yeah. Would there have been anyone before him, like in the single digits though, that would have, I was watching at that point, but I was such a little kid, so I don't like remember. I remember
I mean,
characters,
the
but not
Rob
like,
Sesternino Confessional King.
that would be fair because he did go on to build a podcasting empire around it. So he's pretty good at talking. We know
He
that.
did. Yeah. And he
Yeah,
had some really funny confessionals.
we could, the Rob has a podcast, confessional king or queen of the season. Yeah, working title, we'll go with that. But Let's talk through some of our favorite quotes of the season and who we think was the best confessional king or queen of the season. Uh, I will go first, and then I'll pass it over to you for the part that I'm confident we have in unison here. Uh, I have three that I'm going to mention before we get to Jake and Jake's 1,000 entries into this award. I had
Yes.
Sabaya in episode 2, to Emily saying, "I can't help how I feel, just like you can't help how you say things," which was just a great start for Emily. Also in episode 2, I had Kayla, my soccer NBA fan in me. This tribe is so bad. We're like the Cavs when LeBron left first time. We suck. We can't win anything. That just played perfectly to all of my interests in life. And then episode 5, Brando, when Kendra went to eat the worm and he said 70% 13 or 70% protein, 30% poop, and caught her very off guard. And then I have a list of basically everything Jake said all season long, and it's like a 30-page document. I'm guessing you had a long Jake section at
I
minimum
did.
as a part of this.
Yes. Um, I will give out some other mentions leading up to it. I also had the 70% protein, 30% poop line with a number of dots in between to give just enough pause for Kendra to have put it in her mouth. Um, I also I also liked Austin's "She took my sandwich, so I don't mind her going," as if that was like the final nail in the coffin for him, regardless of how Kelly had played. Um, Katurah's even just in the finale of, I mean, I don't think Jake can get as close to Austin as you, which in conversation
She
with
made a
D,
couple she was the only one who made, like, funny comments about the relationship and, like, teased them
yeah.
about it, and everyone should have been teasing them about it, and she's the only one that did it, so thank you, Katurah, for many things you brought to this season, but being the only one who was like, "We're allowed to, like, in fun, tease them about this, guys, like, come on, this
Yeah.
is cute," and no one else did.
And I mean, Drew had a lot of really good ones throughout,
Drew's were
but
all
my,
monologues they were too long for me to like write down usually. But I do want to say yes, it's between Drew and Jake for the confessional king or queen of the season. And I'm probably gonna pick a quote from Drew or from Jake, I mean, and give him the quote of the year for any of these nominations we're about to rattle off. And so, part of me, my love for Drew, I kind of want to say that Drew is the confessional king or queen because I do think, as great as Jake was, Drew goes over the top tiebreaker with the tribal council monologue of the year is all his monologues. So I'm leaning Drew for the full season, but for the specific quote, anything Jake that came out of Jake's mouth.
yeah. So for Drew's, it was way back when Austin and Drew were spelling off each other for looking for the idol, and then the other one was standing a look as a lookout, and he was explaining how Austin where the plan was for Austin to talk about tacos, and then Drew was like, or sorry, Drew would talk about tacos, and then it was Austin's job to come out and be like, "Oh, I also love tacos," and then that's how they would have their alibi. And I was like, "It's so dumb, but it would probably work, but it's so dumb." And then the fact that Austin wasn't even there, he was just off looking for coconuts to provide a secondary alibi, made it even better.
Yeah. Yeah, I love Drew so much.
Yeah,
I'll give a couple. I mean, there's so many from Jake to pick from. I don't I liked the Succession a couple episodes in a row of I don't know, I'm kind of sucking at Survivor right now. Hopefully I stop sucking. That's the goal. That
yeah,
opened
yeah,
one episode and then the very next episode opens with, "Hi, I'm Jake. I'm still on Survivor."
yeah,
It's just like there was a string of episodes where it just every time opened with, "I'm still here.
yeah,
Happened again. Didn't vote me out, kind of messed up, still here. Don't you love me?" And I'm like, we really do, Jake. We couldn't
yeah.
love
We
you
do.
more. And then I also had, as an actor, I felt like the past couple votes have been an extra. I've been playing the tree, been doing a very good job of playing the tree. But to be honest with you, I'm sick of playing the goddamn tree. So with this vote, I'm more of a supporting role. That one was really great. And then my favorite from the second to last episode, we were looking for peppers on the rocks. We were looking for peppers, under the leaves and the trees. We were looking for peppers everywhere. I need some spice in this game. So those were some of my favorites. There could have been 20 of them.
Yeah.
Were you able to finally pick a favorite Jake quote from the season?
I mean, the tree one is a standout for me. although I'm making fire, I'm burning a rope, I'm doing it as fast as possible. That's what's up. Is by
Yeah.
far my favorite Jake quote of the season and my favorite quote of the season
What
because it was just like so succinct, so straight up, and he was just ready to go.
Yeah, I'm willing to give that one too. My winner was just going to be any Jake quote. You pick your favorite at home, but that is the quote of the year for us. And I think I do want to lean because otherwise, I don't know that he's going to get talked about much more and deserves to. That I just really love Drew, and he gets the Rob Serstanino. Rob has a podcast, Confessional King or Queen slash monologue at Tribal Best Monologuer of the Season award I'm going to give to Drew. With that, then let's move to after MVP. This is the other award that probably in Survivor we're gonna do strategic move best and worst, and I don't do that on the challenge. All these other awards are the same that I would do for a challenge season, and best moment is really kind of the other. It's kind of like MVP's like best director and best moments like best picture. So in some ways, so it's a big award. It matters. It's the one that down the road, if you want to talk the greatest moments, iconic moments of Survivor history, you're going to just kind of pull the winner from every season and throw them in a bracket or something. So this award matters. Well, let's talk through. You can go first and give me a couple of the moments that stood out to you as the best of the season.
Yeah. So Caleb canceling out 11 votes,
For
like
sure. That was
monumental.
episode 6, which
Yeah.
happened earlier when I was going back through. I was like, "Oh, damn, they did get to the merge kinda quick." And also, it was another reminder of, like, this is a nice 13 episodes. It's a great number for a season. Other shows should
Yeah.
pay attention to that. But I was, like, searching and searching, and I had to keep going back and episode but I was like, "Damn, it was episode 6 that happened," like, at the halfway mark. So, yep,
Yeah.
had that one listed.
And I'm gonna get Sabaya back in the mix, burning that candle at final, like at tribal, like baller move, bringing all your supplies and just being like, "This is how I'm gonna do it," and tossing it in there, and watching Jeff try to calculate in the moment if this is something that they can allow to happen was great because it means that it's something that they did not prepare for. And you always like to see when something like that happens because they do plan so meticulously. So even 45 seasons in for them to still have the cast do something that they were not anticipating is
Yeah.
fantastic.
Had that one written down as well. Fantastic, fantastic stuff, and saved us from only having the quitting to talk about. We
Yep,
got something else fun to discuss during those episodes.
very
Um,
true.
what else do you got on
And
the list? We're
I
two for
mean,
two so far.
you gotta go. I'm gonna do two Emily's back to back of calling out Bruce on the boat in the very
Agreed.
beginning, and then making like convincing Bruce that he was so safe that he didn't play his idol later on. So that juxtaposition of that relationship was fascinating to me.
I had Emily calling out Bruce listed. I have her convincing Bruce not to play his idol in the next award for best strategic move, but did not
Yes,
have it listed as best moment. But I like what you're pointing out there of the kind of bookends of that relationship was pretty great. Um, I'll throw in a couple of mine here and we'll see if we
excellent.
can continue staying on the same page. Speaking of Bruce, there had to be something Bruce Katurah related on this list, and I decided to go with the last lasting image of it, which was Bruce trying out his lie on Katurah and thinking for some reason that that would be a good idea of how to approach that strategy that ultimately cost him his game when it probably should not have. Um, and just watching that interaction after everything they had been through and everything we knew about their relationship was just something really special to
Yeah.
watch. I had also that was in episode 10, also from episode 10, the boys' day with the Kenny Loggins, and that they
Oh hell
smeared on
yeah.
the Kenny Loggins track. That was really good and really fun. And then episode 12, Jake's nearly naked idol search, not quite naked idol search, but nonetheless entertaining idol search I had listed. And then my final nominee, and the one that I would say is definitely the winner for me by in a major way, like nothing else even comes close to it, is the back-to-back episode of Austin and D on the beach, and Austin tells D, and the next episode D does not tell Austin, and
Yeah.
how perfect that the just everything aligning for that to take place, how perfect it was, and how beautifully it displayed the main crux of the difficulty of playing Survivor, and it was just unbelievable and fascinating, and also then ends up being the reason one of those two people won over the other one,
Yeah,
is just too perfect. So to me, that is definitely the standout moment of the season, even if it is two moments, but they're completely and utterly intertwined.
absolutely. I will co-sign that gladly.
Yeah. So Dean Austin, you do get to share one thing, and that is the trophy for this. We'll get you two trophies for your two different homes that you'll continue living in. Now, best strategic move, we gave away one of the nominees, or one of my nominees that you already referenced here, Emily convincing Bruce not to play his idol, and that sending him home. While I did not love her how she went about celebrating that after the fact, the move itself was definitely one of the best moves of the game. I then was mostly because I didn't go through my notes that meticulously. I
Yeah,
didn't have a ton of others to put down on here. I only came up with 3 nominees. I had that one. I had Caleb befriending Emily in the first place
yeah.
and just seeing that, like, that was a smart thing and ultimately proved to be very beneficial to both of them in the early going. I had that listed. And then the third one, and probably the biggest one for me, I guess, was in fact the dual decision of D telling Julie in that moment. And then also Julie, I know she obviously doesn't go on to even be in the final three or win, but I think Julie does make the right decision in voting for Emily and not
Yeah.
going with Austin in that moment. And so the dual decision of D telling Julie and Julie voting Emily out and Emily going home off of one single vote was the standout strategic move, the best move of the game, in my opinion. But I again didn't go through my notes that meticulously. So do you have others that deserve to be mentioned in this category?
So I actually like went through all my notes and then just picked one. I
Okay,
narrowed
great.
it down, and it was 100% detailing Julie to play the idol and to take out Emily, and Julie on following through on that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think it's pretty clear cut that one, other if that someone would have got D out, that would have been the biggest move of the game. But the biggest move of the game in my mind was, I was on the Emily's going to win
Yeah,
train there for 3, 4, 5 weeks in a row, and was definitely shaping up to be the biggest threat along with D. And she took her out, and only was able to because of all of the social capital she had built to get all of the information she needed, and then to be able to trust an ally to go through with the plan, and D to be able to be confident enough of, like, I'm still going to vote for you.
yeah,
I'm trusting you to not, like, one, to not go real crazy and vote for me out of this. That would be fucking shocking. But to, like, not X my other person that you've brought up
yeah.
here. So that, yeah, that whole thing is clearly and far above the biggest move of the season, I think. Maybe because, yeah, all the other ones, unfortunately, the big people that went home near the end are more nominees for the worst strategic move that took place to
Yeah.
end up with them there than they are the best. So D and Julie will give you the joint best strategic move. Let's talk worst strategic move then. The only negative category. I've never done a negative award like this before, but it's too much fun. We have to. And there unfortunately was a lot of deserving nominees. I'll let you go first. Did you also just pick one for this, or did you have kind of list of nominees?
I had a few.
Yeah, let's hear it.
So I'll go like, excuse me, I'll go as far back, which is, well, I mean, Sabaya taking a shot at Caleb that early. However, understanding as well that Sean was actually her number one and it wasn't Caleb, but they also suffered from only having 4 people on their tribe by the end of it. So
Mhm.
they had to start making day 20 moves on day like 6. Um, Brando not working harder to build a rapport with Emily. I do understand as well, having listened to some of like the interviews and stuff like that, that the reason that he didn't was because Kendra had said from her time on Lulu Beach that she had a good relationship with Emily. So Brando chose not to work as hard on that. And it ended up costing him his game, but it also ended up costing pretty much all of Bello because Emily then went with Austin and Drew and became a pretty dominant force in the game from that point forward. And if they could have gotten her on their side from the jump, completely different game
Mhm.
by by the time that we're talking about it now. But for me, the worst strategic move is Emily taking credit for Bruce, because she already had a big target by making the move, and she was already on D's radar. which is a bad place to be based on the entire season of any time someone was on Dee's radar, they went home. But she then got on Julie's radar as well. And it was then realized just how big of a threat she was and how much she had changed and how much she had improved her game to the point where no one wanted to sit next to her.
Yeah. Those are some good nominees. And yeah, I concur as much as we just, you know, gave Emily the best strategic move for convincing Bruce. Did not like the then opening of the next episode where she not
Took
only
credit.
took a lot of credit, but did so by being like, yeah, Julie, I told him you were going for him. Like, and it was so great. It was so convincing. It was like, oh, well, I'm a little nervous about you now, but thanks. That's great. He's gone. Um, that was on my list. I had I had a lot on my list. Let's see here. So Bruce not playing his idol also should just be mentioned of like I was Emily convincing? Sure. But you still, I don't know. I think you still play your idol. And if you have he didn't have the read of the room that everyone felt the way that they felt about him.
Yeah.
So for us at home, it seems like how in the world would you not play your idol in that situation? I totally get that he obviously was there experiencing it and did not have the editing read of the room that we did, but it still is tough to leave with an idol in your pocket when you've openly said at that tribal council, I should probably play this idol that's in my pocket right now, and everyone knows I
Yeah.
have it. So that's tough. And then a bunch of ones we've already referenced, but I will go through the list again because it is just a magnificent episode by episode mismanagement of capital in the game. First off, Austin not getting his idol back. Just take it back, dude. Just
Yeah.
take it back the next day. You give someone an idol to hold on to, you take it back the next day. They're not able to do anything about it. If you go to
They
them
are.
that night, they could keep it, but they're
Yeah.
not going to. If immediately afterwards you pull them to the side at night and they're like, hey, cool, glad we didn't have to use that. Oh, wasn't that great? We got everything we wanted to happen. Can I have that back now? Then at worst case, yeah, Julie's like, no, you can't. I think I'm gonna keep it. And you're like, cool, we're enemies now, Julie. That's good. That's how this works. And it's a very different game. So at least asking and not just being like, I guess she's keeping it. Like, what the fuck? Like, the whole time. That's not a good strategy. Not playing his idol for Drew. I know this is pretty minor compared to all the other infractions. He was in the dark, but maybe should have sensed he was in the dark, and or
Yeah.
just it's the last time you could play the idol. So like if you feel as comfortable as he felt, because when he plays it for himself, he's like, I don't know, it's just I should play it. I
Yeah.
don't think I need to, but like I should play it. Play it for someone, whoever you think, maybe I don't
Needs
know.
it the
He could have
most.
played it for Drew.
Yeah.
It's a weak nominee, but it's still mentionable.
Yeah.
Then the big three covered in this episode. Drew telling Austin, who tells D, or you didn't need Austin or his vote in it. You could have separated yourself from the re before, and in my mind, positioned yourself to be the best player in the game. And Drew did not do that. Jake pitching rocks not once but twice as his big bold move and strategy, and the second time doing it with an idol in his pocket that could have been the strategy, and he would not have needed to pitch the tie, and it would have worked, and everyone would have been on board, and they could have done it, and D would have went home, and he pitched rocks instead. And then third and finally, Katurah changing her vote, which may or may not have flipped the $1 million from her to D. Those three. But because all of those three in my mind are pretty equivalent in big ties, I'm going to actually give my vote for who should get the award to Hannah and Sean. Remember those two? They quit. That's the worst strategy on Survivor. So I think quitting was the worst strategy.
That's fair. I thought about it and then I was like, there's so many like in-game strategic moves that are worth mentioning in this category this season that I decided to like leave them where they were. But I totally agree. They definitely did not win as a result of that strategy.
Yeah, you 100% lose if you quit.
Yeah.
So a bunch of other mistakes were made, and I should also say I'm not like, wow, these none of this is like me saying these people are like not smart or like look at
Oh
how many
no.
people like made mistakes, whatever. Big mistakes are a part of the game and it is a part of the entertainment of the game and everything. And they're supposed to happen. They're going to happen every season. And so that's why it's kind of fun to like talk about them and talk about all the hypotheticals of what could have happened and everything. If I was ever lucky enough to play Survivor, you for damn sure I'm gonna have a very Jake like path if I exist for any length of time in the game. Okay. I might not pitch rocks. I might be able to not do that, but otherwise, I would be on this list too. So this is no shade to any of them. But yeah,
No,
in such a crowded, difficult field, I think we've got to just go with Hannah and Sean quitting because it's the
totally.
clearest cut. Is the only move I'm confident I wouldn't make.
Yeah.
I might get medical evac. That's a different type of quitting, but that is not quitting. So we're strategy, Hannah and Sean. And now, before we do season MVP, a quick one. Favorite cast member of the season, which may or may not align with an MVP vote here in a second, but maybe it doesn't. Who, Tony, were your favorite cast members of the season, or a little secondary one too? Maybe along with your favorite of the season, a cast member you wish we got more time with. So maybe someone voted out in the first half of the season that you wish we would have got more time with. Do you have anyone that stands out and you just want to give a shout out to here before we get to the big award of MVP?
Yeah. So I mean, Sabaya, like we were robbed from having Sabaya in this game. Um, I think if it goes a little bit differently, she goes deep. She was my winner pick.
Mhm.
Like when we started our preseason and we had our conversation, I said it was between D Kelly and Sabaya. And I went with Sabaya, and then I ultimately chose D, which ended up being like one of the very few times that I have predicted a winner. So go me on that.
Nailed it.
But Sabaya, like 100%, I want to see her back again. I want, I would have loved to have seen her go deeper into this game. Um, as far as favorite cast members, I would, my favorite four are Jake, Katurah, Emily, and Caleb. Um, which is funny because it's two Bello and two Lulu, and none of the people who dominated the entirety of the game from Reba, which is not a discredit to them, but more so like these four are my vibe. They're what I look for in a survivor player. And Caleb's the Canadian, so of course I'm gonna root for Caleb. Plus he was fantastic. I would watch all five of those people play again in a heartbeat. And I think they will if we start getting returning seasons. Really, no matter what the format, whether it's like a second chance or game changer or anything like that, I can see these five in contention.
Yeah, for sure. I am aligned with you on a bunch of that. As far as like players we didn't get a lot of that I would have been interested in more, I definitely well, I was really high on Sean and then he quit. So, that I have mixed feelings now there. I don't know that I would want more, but I was definitely really
Yeah.
bummed. If you just would have told, if he would have just got voted out, third or whatever, he would be my answer for this. Brando is the other one that I was kind of like, I wish I maybe would have had a little more time with you. But as far as favorite cast members go, it was tough because I love a lot of this cast.
Yeah.
So the five people I ended up putting up, which is a lot, I was trying to come up with one, and I do have one answer that everyone probably knows, but five get mentioned: Emily, Drew, Katura, and Caleb. I loved for different reasons, but thought they brought a lot to the show, and I just really vibed well with them and loved them. But my favorite cast member by far is Kelly, who I love dearly, and I want to give her one special shout out. And this is not because I'm a weirdo or something. This is because she openly had a really funny tweet about this being okay. And so I just want to give her flowers. Kelly, you are super attractive, and I find you super attractive. You're super hot, and we should all talk about it. And I'm saying this because she had a funny tweet or retweet of someone tweeted about uh Austin and I think it was about Austin and D's like showmance or whatever, but then like put at the end, but like low key, Kelly is like super hot. We didn't talk about it. Now that I'm like seeing her on jury or whatever, and Kelly retweeted it and was like, talk about it. It's the only thing I've got left. I got voted out. You might as well go ahead, talk about it. So there you go, Kelly. You're a very attractive woman, and you were my favorite player on the season. And I was bummed that you got blindsided. So that's my five favorites. I would love to see any of them play again. And I'm with you. I do hope we see some people play again.
Yeah.
And then for one more pause before we get to MVP, the other question that you should have known I was going to throw in here, but didn't put on the list. Who do we want to see on the challenge, Tony?
We want to see for sure. I would say Austin and Caleb. They would be like probably my top picks. Um, I'm gonna go back to Sabaya. I could see Sabaya being a force on like a challenge formatted show. Um, I could even see Kelly doing well. Like there's actually a lot of contenders this season, and like Kelly is someone else who I, despite the fact that we got a lot of her, I still would like to have seen more. Because I would have been very happy with Kelly just winning the season overall. And she definitely needs to play again. But yeah,
Yeah.
those would probably be my standouts, like right out of the gate. Um, and I, of course, have thought about it because I think about it every time we see a preseason, and then I watch to see if it actually pans out. But yeah, they would definitely be the ones that I would consider a shoe in for Survivor or for
Yeah.
the challenge.
Um, the one that is not actually, I don't want to see now, but if we could go back in time and all of this would have taken place before Challenge USA 1, and specifically on Challenge USA 1, where they had a much older average age cast, I would have loved to see Bruce on that specific season
Hell
and
yeah,
seen if he drove
Bruce and
people
Dom.
crazy. Yeah, or if he would have been best buds with like Dom and Enzo and them.
Yeah,
I've never said his name. That was the first time I said his name out loud. I've always sworn I wouldn't say his name ever out loud again. I'm sorry, Desi, wherever you are. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say his name. But so that's, I don't actually want him on now. Caleb, definitely. Kelly, definitely. And then the
D
two,
too.
though, I need Austin and D on the same season. I need
Yeah,
Challenge USA 3, Austin and D to both give them whatever money you have to give them to convince them to do it together, or to do it in general. I don't know if they'd be interested or not, but I think they would both independently be good at the challenge and have all of the tools necessary to be a fun cast member and a good competitor there. But it'd be even better if they do, not end up in a relationship, and maybe in the hypothetical world where one of them felt a little more salty about it than the other, or a little more heartbroken than the other, throw them back in another house together and have them compete in another cutthroat game. I think that would be fascinating. So, challenge producers, casting department, definitely make that happen. And please cast Jonathan Young already. We've
I
waited
was
long
waiting. I was gonna
enough.
say it.
We've waited long enough. Let him win already. Please. Jeez.
Yeah,
He's got the off. He has a literal off season. His job only exists in the summer. He's available. Okay, he's out there doing pull ups as we speak, and he needs to be in the challenge house. Anyways, season MVP. All right, the biggest award of them all. We have during the season, we were in the earliest part, we were split on how we approached the MVP, and we often had differing episodic MVPs. By the end of the season, we were kind of in lockstep, but it also did where the two ideas of entertaining versus good gameplay merged. But
yeah,
to recap for the listeners, the MVP of the season is the most valuable cast member of the season. It is not who played the best game, because obviously that is D. And as we've recounted here, she not only played the best game, but she deservingly won for
yep,
playing the best game at the end. That is fantastic. She certainly could be a nominee here. We'll see, but it is not just like who won the season, who is the best player. That's a different award. We don't need to even hand it out because I think the best player won. So there you go. That award is handed out. D is the best survivor player of this cast. She also won. Good for her. MVP is a little bit more entertainment focused. It does typically, when I've given these out on challenge seasons, there's kind of this bar that's hard to say of like how far into the season do you have to go, because like you could be the biggest star of the show but if you're out in episode 4, it's like, okay, well, you were the star for 4 episodes, but there was 13 episodes, so there's a lot of
yeah.
time without you. So like, how far do you have to get? So yeah, there's a bunch that goes into it. A little bit your favorite, a little bit the most entertaining, a little bit the most consequential. The storylines all wrapped in the cast member that if you took them away would have the most dramatic effect on the quality of the season, essentially, is probably the best way to surmise it. I have a top five for my ballot here, Tony. Did you just go with one straightaway winner, or how did you work your way through this process?
So I have a winner, but I also have like these people also played a very big part
Okay,
in the
let's hear it.
season. So it basically comes down to a cat butt on my microphone, but also
The cat
it
butt on the
comes
microphone is not going to win MVP. It did not make it onto my ballot.
no,
Sorry,
didn't
Mozzie.
even last an episode. Um, I would say Drew is a big one. Emily is also a contender. Um, and as well as Jake, obviously. But then also like I'm going to say like Bruce and Katurah together, but both independently brought a lot. Bruce is our first returning player. Rather than being gone 12 hours in, he went fairly deep into the episode, like into the season. He had a huge impact on how the game was being played. And the same with Katurah in the sense that she couldn't get on the same page as Bruce to work with Bruce. And there were so many opportunities where they could have like changed the game, but it just wasn't working from a personality level and or from a stuck on an island with you level. But she also was a very strong player too. So those are my 5.
And do you want to hear my five, or do you want to
Yes.
say your winner first?
I
Okay,
will
so
go
we
with your 5 first,
okay,
and
we
then
had similar mix. We had some of the same people. So I have Emily, I have Drew, I have Jake, I have Caleb, and I have the combo D Austin as the 5 folks receiving votes and ending up on my ballot in some order. And I do cheat oftentimes. The spoiler here is D and Austin didn't win, which is why I put them together on my ballot. Because if one of them were to win, I would separate and only give this award to one person. So those were the 5 that made it for me. Definitely brought the most entertainment. Were a part of the storylines as much as anyone else. All made it far enough into the game to, I usually, when I break this down on the challenge side, I actually say the like gone too soon if there was anyone like
yeah,
that. So like if Emily would have went out in the 3rd or 4th episode, I probably would have been like gone too, like Emily was the MVP for as long as she was there, but it was only, 3 or 4 episodes. Um, there wasn't really any of those people that fit that category on this particular season. So yeah, Caleb, Emily, Jake, Drew, D Austin combo were my 5 that ended up on the ballot. But it didn't take as long to decide my de facto winner as I thought it would. I think someone did separate his or herself by the end of the season for me.
so I will say that Caleb and Kelly were in my gone too soon category. For whatever reason, I had an imaginary cutoff, and there was so much game that was played after Kelly left that I couldn't consider her. And then because I couldn't consider her, I couldn't consider Caleb.
Mhm.
I will also say I did come around to Kendra by the end of it. I ended up genuinely enjoying Kendra a lot more than I thought I would. And the same with Bruce, because the two of them in the beginning, I was like, I don't know. So they're like my most improved, but from my personal opinion, my opinion has improved of them. They didn't do anything. They didn't need to improve themselves.
Yeah.
I just improved my opinion of them. Um, so how do we want to do this? How do we want to
Well,
drop the
I think we
knowledge?
have the same name, and it's probably going to be funny if we don't. So on 3, 2, 1, and then say the name, and it'll probably be the same. Because if it's not, I'm going to be a little bit disappointed in you. So 3, 2, 1, Jake.
Jake.
Yeah, of
There we
course.
go.
Jake's the MVP. My goodness, this guy, what a guy. I love him so much. He's the best. He was the most entertaining in I again,
Yeah.
it I don't get emotional very easy, although it happens more often than maybe I let on when watching shows like this even, but, I mean it when I say I was, like, on the verge of bawling if he
Yeah.
lost the fire challenge, and I was going to turn the show off and not care and just have you tell me who won, um, yeah, very invested in the Jake story arc and very
Yeah.
invested in him as a human, and he was hilarious the whole time. He
Positive.
can you say he was good at the game? I don't know, but he tried really freaking hard, you know?
Yeah.
So he was the most prevalent in the storyline start to finish. He was as entertaining as anyone start to finish. And he got some wins there right at the very end to get to polish off, that there was some resume there that didn't just include pitching rocks twice, which in and of itself is an MVP caliber thing to do. Is really funny and cool. It was kind of tough. I want
Same.
Emily would be someone. This was a good MVP. As we said, this cast was really good. The season was really good, which makes for a good MVP race. Emily would be a deserving MVP winner on a lot of seasons of Survivor or a lot of seasons of reality television. There
Yeah.
just happened to be 2 people who I thought rose to the level of truly MVP worthy, and I'm going with Jake over Emily. But it was definitely a tough decision.
Yes, and that's the same for me. Like it was like Jake is my winner pick, like my MVP pick, but Emily is right behind. And when you said that we're like, when you're like, we're just going to do it on three and then it'll be weird if we don't agree, I was like, I could see this going two ways. I could see it that, well, I guess three ways. We could either both say Emily, both say Jake, or each one say one of them. And Jake, like obviously Jake is an absolute MVP for this season, but I was still like, it's like Emily's a close second. She has that arc and she played a strong game. And it's so cool to see the same person who antagonized the shit out of Bruce like 2 seconds into the season be the same person who was able to instill enough confidence and trust in Bruce, not play as idol. And I don't think that that's a slight against Bruce. I think that's a another feather in Emily's cap.
Yeah.
The same way that the Reba 4 went by mostly like unnoticed because they would have like little meetings in the middle of the night and then not talk during the day and not socialize during the day as much as they were in like larger groups. So it's not a detriment to everybody else. It's an attribute that they were able to pull off.
Yeah, I'm with you. So, unfortunately, we don't have a second place trophy to hand out. Unfortunately, we
Nope.
don't have an actual trophy to hand out. One day, maybe I will get around to making real trophies and shipping them to all the people that I have given MVP awards to, and now to Jake, who we have jointly given our MVP of Survivor 45 award to. So, with that, that's all. That's we covered it. We did it. We did a full season
Yeah.
of Survivor 45 coverage. We missed 1 week, right? We
Yep.
only missed
Only
one
missed
week,
one.
and then we had 1 week where I had to go solo because I was too difficult to schedule with. So I would say roaring success for
Hell
us.
yeah.
Because while we confidently said we would hit every episode, I wasn't actually behind the scenes 100% confident in my schedule and workload abilities to make that happen. So a full season of Survivor Historian is in the books. We
Yep.
will having not discussed exactly how, we will be back in some form or fashion for Survivor 46,
Yep.
be it weekly, be it bi-weekly, be it the beginning and the end, some form or fashion. What between somewhere between 1 and 13 episodes of podcast will happen with Tony and I about Survivor 46. We will keep you updated on what that looks like as it comes closer, which it's February, it's the end of February that the season airs. I forget the exact day.
I
February like
want to
18th,
I
something like
wanted
that.
to say February 11th, but I may have made that date up.
It
I
might
know
be
it's
earlier, yeah.
February.
Yeah, it's really soon though.
Yeah,
It's again New Year's Eve right now as we record this, and so that's like 6 weeks from right now. Not
we're
that
watching
far
season
away.
25 right now as a rewatch
Ooh,
because my friend who we're watching Survivor with, um, her boyfriend and I picked a few of our favorite seasons. We put them all in a hat, and then she picked one out because she's the one that we're getting to fill in the gaps on the shows. And so we're watching 25, which was Malcolm's first season,
what's the title of that season?
Philippines.
Philippines. Okay,
Yeah,
cool. I've if I ever get some free time, I've been considering rewatching a season or two, but I've got a couple in mind. So we'll see if that happens. Probably not in the next 6 weeks between now and the next season. So thank you to everyone who is tuned in and listened and chimed in and messaged
yeah,
us throughout the season and everything else. It has been fantastic to get to join the Survivor podcasting community here. And we look forward to being a part of it in some form or fashion in the future and look forward to more great, fingers crossed. I actually, to come full circle, I remember at the end of season 44 that I enjoyed to a large extent and had one of the all-time great trailers ever. Season 44 did that
yeah,
they showed at the season 45 trailer during the finale of 44, and I remember saying, that in comparison doesn't look like they've got a lot to work with. Doesn't look like I'm a little nervous. This season looks a little average from the trailer. I think I said as much during our preview podcast of like, I'm not getting a lot from the
yep,
trailer or any hints or any clips or anything. And it turns out they were just holding it all back because it was a
yeah.
fantastic season. So the trailer doesn't tell you everything. Sometimes it doesn't tell you anything. Sometimes it lies to you. So don't trust the trailers. Still watch them though. They deserve their view count. And with that, yeah, Tony, it's been fantastic. Thanks for joining
Likewise.
for the whole season. And we will be back sometime, somewhere in the future for another installment of Survivor Historian.
Yes, we will.